It is a Monday edition of Flyers Daily, and we have some big stuff to discuss, lots of stuff to discuss. It is brought to you by Ticketmaster, Make More Memories Live. Joining us on this Monday edition, as he always does, from PhiladelphiaFlyers.com, NHL.com, and HockeyBuzz.com, it is Bill Meltzer. Bill, I don't even know where to start. We got deadline, we got deals, we got extensions, we got 13-5 for a game, a 7-0 defeat, a 2-1 win over the best team in the league. But I guess where we start is here because we all got the notification Sunday evening that Flyers head coach John Tortorella has been suspended. This is from the league office, by the way, for 2 games and fined $50,000 for unprofessional conduct directed at the officials by refusing to leave the bench area after being assessed a game misconduct at 10:49 of the first period. He'll have to sit out the game on tomorrow night against the Sharks, and then on Thursday against the Leafs, and the fine money goes to the NHL Foundation. What did you think of the ejection and now the subsequent suspension and fine?
Yeah, we'll start with the ejection. It was clearly a blown call by a rookie referee who had a pretty rough game in general, and it seemed like every time he missed a call, Tampa would score in that resulting power play. So that, and now it's 4-0. I mean, and it certainly skate over to the timekeeper's table and announce the penalties on Iceman. 23 Tampa, 2 minutes, right? I mean, it was kind of it was a marginal at most call. It was really a non-call, and it just kind of underscored what's he doing out there. And
yeah, he looked overwhelmed.
None of us are privy to what. He did. He looked overwhelmed, and I mean, listen. I think generally speaking, Wes McCauley is one of the 2 or 3 best referees in the NHL. Typically, there's a reason why he's worked in so many Stanley Cup Finals. His dad was one of the best of all time. His dad was a mentor to a whole generation of referees. John McCauley and Wes are very different personalities, but I think generally Wes is good. But I think Wes overreacted here. He was trying to protect his his teammate, because the officials do view themselves as a team.
Yeah.
So and particularly like a coach gets on a rookie ref, a veteran might be more inclined to defend the kid. Right. And I think that's what Wes is trying to do. I think he overreacted, but then again, we don't know what was said.
Yeah.
We really kind of caught it from the last part after he's ejected. A bench minor was appropriate. If it was vehement enough. I thought a game misconduct was a little much. I thought that was a little overkill. So I didn't love the game misconduct part, and I give John Tortorella full marks for sticking up for his team there.
Mm-hmm.
It's what a coach needs to do. When you are ejected, however, it's right there. You have to leave the bench.
Yeah,
and he stood there refusing to leave, and that's what the suspension is for. It's for refusal to leave the bench. You can't dispute that he refused to leave the bench because he clearly did. And that's what the supplemental discipline is for. And now I realize that there's a trail that led to that, but for the refusal to leave part, you can't dispute that the Torch refused to leave. So that the suspension results from it. I have more, I guess I have more issue with the actual ejection than with the supplemental discipline for refusing to leave the bench, because that just is what it is.
Yeah, he wanted his pound of flesh before he got out of there. And a lot of times, veteran referees will let a coach blow their top.
And Wes typically does that. I mean, Wes played. Wes was drafted in the NHL.
Yeah,
and I'm sure he's refereed hundreds of games. The Torts' coach, so it's not like they've never dealt with one another before. It's not like there's any history of animosity between the two of them. But whatever it was that well, again, I don't think it was Wes's best decision, but McCauley might have blown it. I do think that it might have diffused it sooner to skate over to the bench, which is again what he typically does. He's typically one of the more communicative refs. He's not, but for whatever reason, He just wasn't going to discuss it. He just go, you're done. And I mean, listen, there are, there are a whole lot of shades of gray here, right? I don't think Wes handled it right. I do think Torch should have left sooner. I don't think it really had an effect on the Flyers. I think, I mean, Sean Couturier was asked that question after the game, and he's like, no, didn't really have an effect one way or the other, just because you're down 4-0 at that point, and maybe sometimes that sparks you. I mean, the Flyers did kind of settle on after that. I think just the amount of time, just the amount of time that the whole situation bought the team to settle in a little bit.
Yeah,
because for the next 30 minutes, actually,
give up 5 shots, Bill.
Of course, the toothpaste is out. Toothpaste out of the tube by that point.
Yeah.
So, but but they played better after that. I don't blame Torch for this. It's just the friction is a part of hockey. It always has been. It always will be. Torch will serve his 2 games. So I'm sure he and Wes will talk it out at some point. Maybe not till after the season. And then they'll move forward, because West isn't going anywhere and Torch isn't going anywhere.
Should the NHL provide some more transparency here, Bill?
I personally would like to see it. I would. Every official has a supervisor. Officials have supervisors. There's always an officiating supervisor at a game.
Yeah.
And typically what they do is in public, they have each other's back. Now in private might be a whole other story. Yep. And quite often you'll have a veteran ref who will go to the a younger team and say, hey, you really screwed that up. You made it harder on me. You elevated the temperature of the game because now the players are frustrated. You have to be better than that. And what the accountability rides on it is, particularly for a young official, a lot of times, your chance of getting a playoff assignment go down. That playoff assignment to be money for these guys. Yeah. You get contracted to work a certain number of games, and when you work over that number of games, then you get additional pay for them. So they feel it in the wallet if their work isn't good enough. That's and that stays out of the public eye. I wish, and there are veteran refs who back in the day, it would usually be a pool reporter rather than the officiating room. Yeah, but there'd be a pool reporter, and an official would be available to speak to the media after the game. Paul Stewart was very good at it. Kerry Frazier was very good at it. Bill McCreary was really good at it. You might agree with them, you might disagree with them, but they would explain it how they saw it. At the time that the NHL, and this is all via Paul Stewart, by the way. At the time the NHL took officials' names off the back of the jersey, they really wanted the officials to kind of be, to be nameless, faceless. The officials that just
not the story,
not the story, right? But to me, it kind of backfired. For officials not to be able to talk to the media, then everybody fills in the blanks, and and the flip side too is like when the NHL said that you can't talk to the media anymore, then they started imposing fines for criticizing the officiating. Because there weren't automatic fines before if you publicly criticized the officiating, within reason. Within reason. But, so it really, I think the NHL, in trying to lessen controversy, ended up creating more controversy. And we're, about 30 years into that at this point. So I think the old way worked better, honestly.
Yeah, I think I like the system that they use, the Department of Player Safety uses, or where they put a video out. Like, I think that we're not going to ever find out what Torch said, and publicly from the league or anything like that, or what led to the ejection. But we now know the result. Bill, the loss though in Tampa. It's weird because like that game, the dirt and shovel brigade came at me again last night. They're always there ready to pour dirt on the coffin as soon as a hiccup happens in a season, in an 82-game season. And it wasn't like we saw this one coming. We didn't over the past couple of weeks see the team, kind of taking on water and getting away with it. They had one of their signature wins of the season. I put it right there with that Dallas win, the 2-1 win over Florida 2 nights before in the same state, for goodness sake. But they go out in that game, and to me, that's just one of those games that got totally on top of them. The momentum that Tampa Bay came out with, they were never able to stem the tide. It wasn't Erson's greatest performance, and it was just one of those games that happens. What's important now is how they respond to it. Do you have any concerns in how they might respond to it? Because this is different. This isn't San Jose on November 6th. This is now amidst a playoff push.
Yeah, I think that I think the Flyers need to respond against San Jose the way that Tampa Bay just responded against them, because Tampa got absolutely spanked in the game before that.
Calgary,
and Calgary took them apart, and John Cooper, really laid into the team, publicly. This is not acceptable. And they came out and more than took care of business against the Flyers. You go back to really both Florida games were kind of similar, Jason.
Yeah.
Because in both games, Florida dominated the first period, and Samuel Ersson kept the Flyers in it. The first time held them to 1 goal, and then Thursday kept them off the board. It was 0-0 entering the second period. And then the second period was pretty even, competitive, and then the Flyers controlled the third period. I mean, both games followed that kind of script. This game last night didn't have a chance to do that, because they score on their first shot of the game. You take a couple, whatever. The going into that game, you knew you had to stay out of the box against Tampa Bay, because even though you had the number 1 power play in the league, that's a power play that's clicking at over 28%, that has so many weapons. You're just, I think a big part of the reason why the Flyers really handled Tampa the last game in Philly was that the Flyers, they took 2 penalties, but really only one.
Mm-hmm.
It was a 2-minute penalty. The other one, Tampa canceled out pretty quickly with a penalty of their own. So you only had to kill 1 penalty in that game. I mean, Tampa has the number 1 power play in the NHL, and in 3 games against the Flyers, they scored 5 power play goals. So the power play just, the special teams part of it just buried you in this game. So, and before you know it, it's 4-0. Your coach is ejected. Your other goalie's in. And at that point, again, even though the Flyers played better until the third period, you've already pretty much lost the game within the first 10 minutes. So
Tampa outshot the Flyers 26-25 in that game. More shining example of why shot totals are overrated, in my opinion.
Although they had 9 of the first 10, it was already 4-0 at that point. You look at the final shot totals, much more even, but Tampa could afford to pick their spots after that.
Yeah, and there's human nature elements there too. A team lets their foot off the gas when they're up 4-0, especially with that kind of stoppage that happened and everything that ensued. Bill, the trade deadline has come and gone, and it was a really interesting one because I thought there was a lot of intriguing activity all over the league, and the Flyers were right in the middle of a lot of it. Ultimately, though, Danny Briere is able. I didn't think he'd be able to. I think when we talked last week, I didn't know if there was a first-round pick market out there when you saw what Tanev went for, and you see some of the other deals. But that ability to weaponize cap space by taking on Ryan Johansson, enabled him to be able to get that first-round pick. What'd you think of that deal?
I think in the, again, you look immediacy, you look big picture. Big picture to get a first round pick for a guy who was going to be unrestricted after this year, and from we weren't privy to what actual negotiations took place or discussions, but it sounded like the two sides were nowhere close in whatever exploratory talks that they had. So you're probably going to lose Walker after the season anyway. Walker, so long term you get a first round pick next year. Now you had two first round picks last year, 2 first round picks this year, 2 first round picks, next year. So that's 6 first round picks in a 3-year span, plus several second rounders. So they're, if you draft and develop well, that's part
that's a rebuild.
That's a rebuild. That's how you do it the right way. As long as the development side goes right, as long as you draft guys, with the upside that you think that they have, and you develop them the right way, that's your rebuild. That's your how you build a core. You're kind of staggering guys' arrivals. Michkov is in the pipeline. He'll be here, hopefully sooner than later, but we'll see. So that's how you go about a rebuild. So big picture, to get a first round pick out of Walker and taking on Johansson's contract, half of it. Nashville gets the other half of it. So I think that's fantastic. I mean, to get the first round pick when there weren't a lot of first round pick, and to get a guaranteed first round pick too.
Yeah.
Like even Pittsburgh didn't get a guaranteed first round pick for Gensel, for crying out loud, right? And Gensel he's one of the best players in the league. Teams hang on to first round picks like for dear life. So to be able to do that by taking on a bad contract and trading a useful player, full marks on that one.
It does hurt now, though. It does lessen
the short-term
especially
concern,
with the injuries.
was something that I thought was that I was going to say. Your blue line is banged up, and you lost a guy who's been pretty darn good this year. And one of the things that I wanted to see, and we'll see how they're going to have to adjust around it. I thought in the Tampa game, especially till the game got out of hand, they were missing that breakout ability from the D zone. And one of the things that Walker does really, really well, one of the things he really added this year was that ability to get the pucks up to the forwards in stride. The Flyers would be off in the attack. Flyers have been a great team off the rush, and Sean Walker was an important part of that. You don't have that element now, and while there are things that Eric Johnson will bring you, penalty killing, shot blocking, veteran presence, etc. One thing he's not going to do is trigger your breakouts. Yeah. So that's something they're going to have to adjust to. And with a bunch of tough opponents coming up, I would say that's something to watch in the games. How well do the Flyers break out of their zone? So that's on the short term.
Yeah, because a lot of their offense comes from that. That's been a huge element, and it also leads to defending less. That ability to break the puck out and get it out quickly and turn to offense quickly. And without that, it's going to be tough. I mean, you're still without Ristolainen, Drysdale, and Sealer. Sealer signs the extension 2.7 by 4 years, Bill. And everybody loves Nick Sealer. Love the guy, love the player. Yeah. Were you okay with the term here?
I think that it maybe the year longer than ideal. I was very comfortable with 3. 4 is a bit longer than you'd like to see. Because he's he's in his 30s now. He plays that game where he's going to take a beating from all the shots that he blocks. You hope that he doesn't miss significant time with whatever. I mean, I was kind of amazed he didn't really miss any time until the puck he took off his foot the other day. So long term, maybe the final year. But at a 2.7 cap hit, that's reasonable. Cap's going up. You could work around that when you have to in a few years. And in terms of the no trade element, he wouldn't be. You're not moving him the first 2 years anyway, and then there's no protection on the back half of the contract. So I think it's fair for all sides.
How about the Wade Allison Gurianov deal? Allison played 60 games for the Flyers last year. Has spent this entire year, was passed by some younger players on the organizational depth chart. He gets a new home in Nashville. Gurianov, who's a former 20-goal scorer in the 1920 season, had a pretty good playoff that year too. I think he had 17 points, 9 and 8. But hasn't really kind of lived up to it since. But this seems to me like a kind of a win-win for both, or at least some reward potential for both, but very little risk.
Yeah, I mean this is kind of an audition for Gurianov. He's free agent at the end of this year. Flyers get to assess, and I think he's unrestricted at the end of this year at that. So you assess it. Is he a guy you might want to have along moving forward? I think people know that besides the Flyers, I watched quite a few Dallas Stars games. So I saw him coming up with the Stars as a first round pick. And yeah, he kind of landed with an immediate splash. Playoffs too. That first year, which is the pandemic year. So he had a 20-goal year. Then you start again in the playoffs, and he had a good playoff too. And ever since then, you get flashes of ability. He has really good hands. He's a good skater. But ever since that rookie year, it's been less than the sum of the parts for whatever reason. he's kind of stopped getting to the scoring areas. That's one thing that I noticed towards the end with Dallas. I didn't watch him too much with Nashville. He ended up kind of yo-yoing between the NHL and the AHL, which is, that can be a bit of a red flag. But this is an opportunity. Not a question of talent. Again, he was a first round pick,
12th overall.
12th overall, has already has a 20-goal season to his credit. So he can do it. It's there because he's done it already. He has to show that he can do it on some kind of a sustained basis. And as with Wade Allison, Wade spent last year in the NHL. What happened, with Allison is a lot of injuries. That's no secret. I think that from, on the hockey side, I think that John Tortorella had some frustrations with him. I think Tortorella had one vision of the player that he thought that Wade should be. I remember specifically Tort saying last year he's going to east-west himself right out of the lineup.
Yeah, and he did.
I think there's a way that Wade thinks he can play. There's a way that Tortorella says you need to play. And everyone, they would start to get on the same page, and then Allison would get hurt again.
Yeah,
it seemed, it just seemed to be in that cycle. He was very much, I thought, in the mix to get in, and I think Danny Briere said as much. Coming to camp, he didn't have a guaranteed job, but he was certainly in the mix to have an NHL job in the opening night. What happened was that Brink particularly had a great camp.
He did.
So Brink makes the team. Forster goes from an NHL look-see at the end of last year to a full-time player of the NHL this year, and that kind of squeezed Wade out. Wade had a very rough start with the Phantoms. Whether how much of it was he was disappointed to be back down again, maybe it was just a slump, I don't know. But it was enough to where Lappy called him out and said, I think Lappy was Lappy to me is very fair. I mean, and he's the guy who, even when he criticizes the player, he usually will say something positive too.
Yeah,
he had nothing positive to say. It was about a month into the season at that point.
Yeah, he was frustrated.
Wade has gotten, he was frustrated by what he was saying, and specifically what he said was, Wade needs to channel that frustration, be more like Tanner Lazinski, and the way that Laz handled being sent down. Unfortunately, Lazinski spent now a significant time being injured, but saying that this is the player who's you should be following kind of, and how he's handled the demotion. And I thought that Wade got better as the season went along, started to look more like himself. But by that point, you're behind the 8 ball. Some younger players have passed you. I think, and then Wade again had a not as protracted amount of time, but he missed a little bit of time again this year with injuries. And I just think that Wade needed the change of scenery, and maybe it'll benefit him. Look what did for a guy like Ryan Hartman, actually, right?
Yeah.
Because and I think that because Wade has that big shot, I don't think he uses it enough.
Agreed.
And so he's a guy who can win you battles on the walls, get to the net, score some gritty goals in close, and
straight line forechecker. Yep.
Yeah. I think all those abilities are still there. For whatever reason, it just hasn't been a good year for him overall. Again, I think he's gotten better as it's gone along. I think getting him to another organization could benefit him, whether it's this season, whether hopefully he plays well enough to earn another contract with Nashville, or hook on somewhere else. But I still think there's something there. But I got to a point where I didn't think it was going to happen here.
Yeah, I remember talking to him at exit day last season, and the one thing I said is, I want to see your shot more. Yeah. I want to see you get that off more. And part of that's incumbent upon the player to get to the right spot, to get that shot off, and to get pucks delivered to you to get that shot off. So we wish the best for Wade Allison. Let's get to a couple of Twitter questions, Bill. Robert Connolly tweets in. He says, does it make sense to move Konechny for a developing center between Farabee, Tippett, Forster, Michkov, Barkey, Tuamala, and Brink? There's plenty to develop, plus draft picks, and something has to give. I don't think you're trading Konechny for a developing center. I don't think you're going to get the right value there. Plus, I just don't think they're moving Travis Konechny because to me, he's kind of the soul of the team. I think they're going to extend Travis Konechny come July 1st.
Yeah, I don't see any other outcome other than an extension. And he can't even sign till July 1st because that'll be officially the last year of the deal. I'm sure there have already been, discussions along those lines. No one is the saying is always Wayne Gretzky got traded. There'd be a trade where you'd say, yeah, you have to do it, but teams aren't lining up to make those kind of trades typically these days. So
especially with a player that's 1 year away from UFA status.
Exactly. And Konechny's, he's in his prime right now. You do have to be the only thing you have to be mindful of, I'll say, with the Flyers is not re-signing him, but it's just making sure that you don't end up in the same situation where they were in the middle of the 2010s, where you had Giroux and you had Voracek and you had Wayne Simmons and you had just enough around it to be a bubble team. Never much more, right? They topped out at 98 points, never got through the first round. So you don't want to end up in bubble status. But that is not specific to Konechny. I think you keep building, and and I think for the next several years, for the foreseeable future, he still is a critical piece of that. And so I think he's re-signed too.
Yeah, the other part of that, and this is an interesting time for the Flyers because they're coming up on being a very healthy team cap-wise. With the cap going up as well, that certainly helps. But the way they're structured, this is a critical time not to, put yourself back in jail, back in cap jail. Yeah. And look, I think Konechny wants to be here, and I think we'll want a fair deal, and they can offer 8. Nobody else can. So that will be a part of that as well. Ethan says, well, with the remaining games, how many do you feel the Flyers need to win, or how many points to secure a playoff spot? Bill, the 7 games coming up, which, you have tonight or tomorrow night rather against San Jose, then the murderer's row of games against Toronto, Boston, Toronto, Carolina, Boston, Florida, and the Rangers. You're going to have to secure some points in there, and you've got a decent amount of 16, I think, games left. What's it going to take to get into the East this year, to be that 3rd seed? Is it going to be 93, 94?
Yeah, I think that's right around where the magic number is. We'll see if the Flyers could get a little help from some of these. The Islanders have some tough games coming up too, and now with a back-to-back out in California, that's never easy. No matter who you're playing, that's never easy. So we'll see. I think that they should. We're recording this on Sunday. I expect they'll win Sunday. Monday in LA
in the first.
Already. Yeah. And Monday in LA is going to be a tough one for them.
Yeah.
So I would not be shocked if LA were to win that game. The way that they've been playing, really under Patrick Waugh, but just in general lately. I mean, they're surging. The Flyers have to take care of business. I would say the biggest thing to me is that you're going to lose some games along the way. You would like to, at least in the majority of the ones you don't win, come away with a point. Yeah. So you pick off a few, win some, and the ones you don't win, you're at least gaining a point. So like a 3 points out of 4 kind of scenario. If you can do that with a little bit of consistency, I think you're in. Even if the Flyers go into Tuesday night in a points tie with the Islanders, they have a pretty significant tiebreaker advantage. And there's other teams still coming too. I don't think Washington can carry this through. I think Washington will fade. And I don't count anybody else. I think the Devils had their opportunity and lost it, and Pittsburgh is toast. So
yeah, I look at the Devils. The math is getting really difficult for them. Plus, I just don't see it. Pittsburgh, I mean, that's going to be a whole different situation there. And obviously they trade Ruedel and they trade Gensel. You look at some of the big deals around the league, like Carolina. They go out and get Kuznetsov and they get Gensel. Like, they've really beefed up. You look at what Florida did, and you look at some of the teams in the Western Conference. Like, I mean, Vegas. That's just absurd at this point. Dallas was a little earlier in the deadline. Winnipeg improved themselves, and it's going to be fascinating how it plays out. Bill, great stuff as always. We'll wrap it up there, and Bill will be back next week for another Monday edition. But everybody will have a preview of Flyers Sharks tomorrow night, a game the Flyers cannot take lightly. I suspect they won't, coming off the game against Tampa. Join us tomorrow for a brand new episode of Flyers Daily.